Hello, good morning, or good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are today. Thanks for joining our weekly live stream where we cover stuff related to digital transformation, all the people, process, technology, and strategy stuff that you need to know about digital transformation. I'm excited for our guest today, who I'll introduce in just a moment. First of all, my name is Eric Kimberling. I'm the CEO of Third Stage Consulting, and we are an independent consulting firm that helps clients with their digital transformations. Um, Thanks for being part of this live stream. As I mentioned before, this is a weekly live stream we do to partially to get your input and your audience questions on different topics related to digital transformation. And we actually use these interviews, these live interview recordings, become part of our Transformation Ground Control podcast too. So you get to be part of the actual production of the show. So thanks for joining us here today. Today's topic, though, what we're going to cover today is something that's really cool and different and exciting. I guess I should say it's similar to other topics we've covered, but never in this context, never in this combination. We had this topic covered on our live stream, and I'm pretty excited about it, and something that's still relatively new to me, and something I think a lot of us are still learning about. So we thought we'd have a good discussion here today as it relates to artificial intelligence and change management. So covering both the angles of how artificial intelligence technologies is affecting the discipline of organizational change management, as well as how the discipline of organizational change management can enable artificial intelligence and other sorts of technology and initiatives like it. So we're going to cover this sort of convergence of the hard side, the quantitative data science-based technology of artificial intelligence combined with the people, human, less predictable aspect of organizational change management, which creates a very interesting combination, and which is part of what makes this conversation so interesting. So that's the topic today. And actually, before I introduce our guest, if you don't mind just dropping in the chat for our live audience here today, just drop in the chat where you're from, where you're joining us from, what city, what country, just so we know where you're all from and what kind of an audience we have here today. And in fact, also, before I introduce our guest, one last thing. If you do have questions as well, in addition to letting us know where you're from, if you could just drop any questions you have for Theresa or I, please feel free to drop that in the chat as we're going here today, and we'll get to those questions as soon as possible during the discussion. So without further ado, our guest today is Theresa Richardson, who's a Director of Strategy and Transformation at Third Stage, recently promoted to Director of Strategy and Transformation. So congratulations on that.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
In fact, this is just your first week as a director at Third Stage. Is that correct, Theresa? So
that is correct. Yeah,
we're just throwing you into the fire. We're just throwing you into the fire here.
That's been my whole career. It's like sink or swim, jump into the fire, emerge as a phoenix, or just burn completely. So I'm still here. So.
Yep, you're doing a great job, and appreciate you being here today as well. So I guess to start, maybe tell us just a little bit about your background in change management, and you have other disciplines that you've become an expert in. Maybe tell us a little bit about yourself before we jump into the conversation.
Sure. So the whole sink or swim thing began back in my days in manufacturing. When I lived in Michigan, I worked with several of the big three. Automotive manufacturing. So my journey to change management has started out organically, meaning I started out with a really hard methodology. I did lean manufacturing, smart manufacturing, Lean Six Sigma, etc. Within those methodologies, it became quite apparent to me that if you don't have the team that is buying into what you're doing, you're going to fall flat on your face. So understanding how to really get the team around what I'm doing and having them being part of the conversation for the solution, and having them be part of the action planning and the execution is very important. And honestly, that's how my change management journey began. I'm a certified ProSci change management practitioner, and I've had years and years of experience within change in many industries, again, from automotive to healthcare, IT, logistics, tech, etc. So I cannot underscore how important it is to get the teams engaged in what you're doing, especially if I've said it probably 2,000 times now. If Unless your process is 99.9% automated, you're going to have people involved. Yeah.
Right.
So,
and that's again why this topic's so interesting, because in some cases
absolutely.
you are automating people's jobs. So how does that affect, how does that affect it and that sort of thing? That's part of what we'll get to here today. But I guess
Dive into.
before we dive into those details, though, I guess just to start, just real basic, fundamental sort of overview 101 response here to, let's cover AI and change management individually, and then we'll kind of come back to how it all comes together. How does change management, the people side of change, converge with the AI technologies that are available out there? But to start, just tell us a little bit about what exactly is artificial intelligence. I know we've all probably heard the term, but a lot of us may not fully understand what that really means.
Sure. So AI really, what it is it's a field that combines computer science and our database sets together to help make problem solving easier. You can interpret the data, you can learn from it using AI, and then you can use it to help you achieve certain goals. I would also like to say that this field is exploding. So the global artificial intelligence market right now is valued at $62 billion in 2020. And it's expected to grow at a compound annual growth rate of 42% from 2021 to 2028. So it's really, really important to be able to get in front of that and understand what artificial intelligence is. You have artificial intelligence, you have machine learning, you have deep learning. So, someone who is not a data scientist or doesn't have their fingers or on the pulse of what AI is, you really need to get ahead of that curve because it's coming. And I know we've had a brief conversation about this wave that's coming, and we need to be prepared because people instinctually don't like change to begin with. They don't like it. So when you add the extra layer of an artificial intelligence system coming into your workplace, your organization to make things more efficient, to have a better understanding of your data sets, et cetera, that's going to even make the issue worse. So if you don't get ahead of it now and understand the growth rate, understand what it is, understand how it can help your teams instead of having the fear grow in your teams and thinking it's going to hinder them or even worse, replace them, right? It's going to make the journey for your change practitioners or your change activities even harder.
Right. Okay. So then just to maybe help us understand, so that's a little bit about AI, but what about change management as a discipline? Just how do you simplify that, or just sort of give us an introductory overview
Sure.
of what exactly it is?
So change management really is the people side of your change. It's understanding how your teams are looking at the problem ahead of you. So when you look at a change management initiative or a definition of it, you really need to focus on the people aspect of that activity. So it's communication, it's training, it's learning, it's having them part of the current state analysis and having them part of the solution for the future state analysis or the future state initiative. And again, if you want to sum it up into like one sentence, change management is the people side of change and how you're going to help facilitate your teams to go from current state as is to future state with high adoption and usage rates.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's I like that one sentence way you described that there. That is a great way to view it. So, so that's a good overview to start sort of the two pieces we're talking about here today, the AI piece and then the change management piece. So if we sort of come back to AI then, and let's kind of hone in on that for a second, just looking at AI and then how change management enables AI, or why change management is so important to AI. What are some of the major impacts that AI typically would have on an organization, and then the resulting impact on people in particular? So in other words, why is change management so important for AI? What are those impacts?
So let's just take an example of a project manager. So how much time does a project manager really spend with those mundane tasks of updating, their spreadsheets, looking at Gantt charts, et cetera, et cetera? A lot, right? Like 15, 20% of their time, maybe a little bit more, a little bit less. With an AI, you could actually have those things automated. You could have triggers in there that would alert you that you're behind your project. You could have like a PM bot or whatever you want to call it go in there and monitor your statistics, monitor your KPIs, making sure you're on task and target, making sure you're on budget, alerting you of things coming, like, okay, hey, this is coming up, or you're getting too close to your target if you want to below it. So AI really helps to use the data sets that you have to become more efficient in what you do. So, I liken it back to like my Lean Six Sigma. You have value added tasks and you have non-value added tasks. Value added tasks are what the customer is going to pay you. So I believe that AI can help you take over those non-value added tasks so you can be more productive in what your skill set really calls for. If you're a PM and you're spending 20% or 15% of your time, doing these mundane tasks, that's 20% of your time you could be using for something within your realm of responsibility.
Right. So that project manager task is a good example, or that project manager role is a good
Absolutely.
example of how AI can affect, say, 15 to 20% of your job. It's been, being automated, or at least you have a tool set that can help you automate that job.
Absolutely. And honestly, AI can help you with your data analytics, predictive analytics. I don't think people use predictive analytics as much as they should, meaning that you're able to take your data set and help you to see the impact of one avenue versus the other. Predictive analytics to highlight areas of a concern. You could use your change bot, if you will. And I've done some reading and I've seen that term out there to help identify those opportunities, suggest some corrective actions, which honestly will have a quicker or better impact to your ROI. Like, you spend a lot of time doing data analytics and looking at your usage rates and your adoption rates, et cetera, et cetera. Imagine a world where that information is quickly populated from a change bot or whatever AI term you want to use, and it's right at your fingertips. So instead of you having to go out and research and get this information, it's right at your fingertips, so you can make decisions quicker, which would have a better impact to your ROI. You can use the AI to help when you're looking at digital adoption platforms. You can help with training, you can help with onboarding, you can get your metrics sooner, you can get all this information again at your fingertips. And like I said, back to the project management example, taking your skill set and being able to use a larger portion of the skill set towards the activity versus mundane tasks is going to be huge for not even productivity, but for results.
Right.
In my opinion.
Gotcha. So I guess then that, you've talked about ways that AI can help an organization, but at the end of the day, it's automating part of, or replacing part of, people's jobs in some way, oftentimes, which I would imagine would create a certain amount of fear and trepidation and resistance to change, because I don't, it's as cool as it sounds to have that chat bot or that change bot you're talking about, or that bot that can help me project manage better and give me inputs. I still might worry that you're taking away the value that I bring, because I manually do that, or I've got something in my head that I typically would have done in the past that's now being done by AI technology. How do you see it affecting resistance to change? And what are some of the best ways to overcome that perceived fear, which I think is a bit different for AI than even other types of technologies we've seen over the years?
Well, I think this adds another layer of what if, or how does this impact me? And that always comes back to a lack of understanding. So, in my opinion, people don't go to work to do a bad job. They want to be part of a solution. They want to be part of something exciting. and something of growth, right? They want to put their fingerprints on what they're doing because it brings a sense of fulfillment, right? So if you're spending your time, 20% of your time or so, on mundane tasks, how is that really speaking to your desire of wanting to be part of something good, right? So whenever you look at any change management initiative, you have to understand why we're not embracing this. And a lot of times it has to do with the fear of the unknown. I don't understand, how is this going to impact my job. I know a lot of the projects that I've worked on, you have a lot of workarounds that people spend a lot of time building, and they don't want to give it up. They don't want to get out of their comfort zone. But if you are able to show the benefits of using this technology to your benefit, like, hey, Eric, I know you spend an X amount of time doing these administrative tasks or what have you. What would you feel about us being able to automate that so you can take on another project, or you can start building another skill set, so your value add increases and your non-value add decreases, right? So I think being able to have the conversation with teams to understand, what is your view on AI? What other things would you like to learn or be part of to replace that 20% of non-value added activity to help your career, to help growth? I think AI is going to allow us to do things that, yeah, it's out of our comfort zone. But being out of your comfort zone doesn't mean it's a bad thing. You could learn a different part of the business. You could learn a different skill set. You could learn things that will bring more fulfillment to your role in the company. It doesn't have to be a bad thing if you explain the benefit and if you have a conversation with your teams. I think a lot of times companies don't have those conversations. They don't explain it. They don't show the benefit up front, even before it's coming. They're just like, oh, here it is. Here's your, here it is on your desk. Yay for you. We're going to love change. It's like, wait a second. Why don't we understand how our organization is feeling? Why don't we show them, give them examples, give them information so they can, absorb it and ask questions. I think that when you don't ask the questions, it doesn't show that mutual respect companies are wanting in their culture, right? It's a two-way street. If you want me to do something, I need to understand why. I need to understand how it's going to benefit me. How is it going to benefit my job? People spend a lot of times at their jobs. They're sacrificing times with their family and with their outside interests. So we have to make sure what we're doing is understood and seen as a benefit than a hindrance in the company.
Right.
In
Yeah.
a nutshell. I could talk about this all day.
Yeah. Well, it's a cool topic. I mean, it's really interesting, and it's also, it's as cool as it is, and as much of a positive thing that it is in many cases, in terms of how AI can help an individual do their jobs better and help the organization. I think, there's a lot of great examples of how AI can help, but at the same time, I think there's a sort of underlying fear similar to what people, back in the 80s, it seems like back in the 80s, it started a bit where people had this fear of robotics taking over their jobs, taking over manual labor type jobs. Now AI is another perceived threat. Is it going to take away my job entirely? Might be an underlying concern that people have. Maybe right now, maybe not right now, maybe not just by helping me automate 15 to 20% of my job so I can develop in other ways, but it might be greater than that. So I guess, how big do you see resistance to AI being, from a people perspective?
So I think what you said is really interesting, though, and I'd like to dive into that, right? So you stated that back in the 80s there was a fear of X, Y, and Z, right? It's all how you poise the conversation. If you start out with that fear factor, the unknown, that scary monster under your bed, yeah, the first seed that gets dropped in my head is fear, resistance, hesitation, et cetera, et cetera. I know they had this old adage, like, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never, whatever. That's not true.
Yeah.
Words really put, ideas in your head. And if we're able to craft the message of positivity, of growth, of abundance, of improvement. You're going to replace a lot of that fear building that's been happening over the past, I don't know, what, 30 decades or something, or it was 1980. I don't want to count because that'll age me, but whatever.
Four-ish decades.
Sure. But there's a lot to said about messaging, right? A lot to be said about messaging and tone, inflection, etc., and how you roll something out versus, oh, I heard. So what is the reality of the situation? How is this going to help me? What is the proof versus the what I heard or the rumor or whatever? Because that's how resistance begins. I'm an employee. I heard this. I heard that. I have no evidence to suggest otherwise, except for my trusted coworker who heard from his brother's sister's girlfriend's uncle's friend. You know what I mean? So if we can get around those types of messages and communications and get ahead of the curve, that's why I really want to talk about this and get it out there, because this industry is coming no matter what. So it is our responsibilities as professionals and as consultants or whomever, whatever title you want to say, to get ahead of that, to understand what does it mean, how is it going to impact our organization, what are the benefits, how do we get people to embrace this versus the message of, oh, I heard my uncle's cousin's lost his job because of AI. It's like, well, wait a minute, what about improving your skill set? What about possibly expanding your role? What are the benefits of AI, so you're not spending X amount of your time in non-value added work? I would even say, tell me what you don't like about your job. Even before this comes out, let's do a survey. What don't you like about your job, Eric? You're a PM. Tell me. Oh, I don't like that I spend so much time on my Gantt charts. I don't like to have to go digging for data. I don't like having data that doesn't match up, because I don't trust the databases because we have work, so all of these points of confusion or of pain, we need to address that. Okay, well, Eric, I heard what you said. You don't like spending 20% of your week on this. Did you know that AI can help eliminate that? So now you have only 5%. So what are you going to do with the other 15? What do you want to do, Eric? Oh, well, I would really like to learn this skill set. Okay, well, let's try to get that done. So you have to replace that fear factor with something positive, so you can create that willingness to hear me. Like, if I don't communicate well, you're going to shut me down. You're not going to hear anything past, hi, Eric, I want to talk to you. That's it. I'm done. You'll doodle, you'll look in the sky, you'll whatever. So I need to break that barrier so you can hear my message. And you're not going to hear my message until I respect you enough to listen. It's not going to happen.
Yeah. And it also strikes me that this is why, or part of why, organizational design is so important, is because in order to that conversation you just described, as far as what I like best about my job, what I like least, what I could be doing, and sort of what my possible role could look like going forward. I mean, you're sort of getting into the guts of organizational design, and that's just defining what someone's job, their roles and responsibilities are going to be in the new post-transformation world after deploying whatever technology, in this case, AI. So I think, in the example of the project manager, really honing in on what that 15 to 20% of their job that's going to be somewhat automated or partially automated by AI, defining what that's going to look like and how they're going to do their jobs, what skills they need, how we're going to upskill that person, or, develop them in the way they need to support that technology. I think that's a part that a lot of people overlook. They just think, well, we're going to put the technology in and people are going to adopt it because it's great and awesome. It's going to help the company.
Absolutely.
It's not quite that simple from what you're saying.
It's not, but I like the way you brought that other piece of organizational design in it, because, here at Third Stage, we see the whole picture, right? It's not just a transformation or an ERP selection, or it really is the holistic view of how these pieces kind of fit together. And our expertise allows us to see that picture, right? We're not saying organizations are, but we don't have that tunnel vision of, oh, this is what I need in that. There are other impacts, and they really build upon each other. If you want to have a well-tuned organization, there are a multitude of facets that you need to address. And then with you selecting an ERP or you selecting an MES or whatever technology you're looking for, there are other pieces you really need to consider to roll that out successfully. Like I say it all the time, we can either do it the right way or we can do it right now. What is it you want to do? Because they're two different avenues, two different consequences. If you want to be, have your tunnel vision, I want to do it right now, I don't care, blah, blah, blah. Okay, well then these are the other things. I'm just letting you know, these are the other things that could be impacted. If you want to do it the right way and be successful and have, your usage, your adoption rates up, lower defects, better customer service, better product, these are the things you have to address. The organizational design, the assessment, the change management piece, and you roll AI on top of all of that. How do we really bring all of that into fruition to be successful versus doing it right now? So again, every decision a company makes, it impacts their ROI. It doesn't matter. Like, this avenue or that avenue, what's going to be my impact? Because at the end of the day, it's about dollars. It's about providing a service, providing a product, making sure our teams are taken care of so they can really give the best performance or the best effort to creating a successful organization. And if you're not looking at all those pieces, you're going to miss something. And then put AI on top of all that. What are we doing?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I want to turn to the audience here real quickly. There's first of all, thank you for all the feedback on where you're from today. So a lot of you commented on where you're joining from. So we have Dennis from India. Thanks for joining all the way from India at late at night your time. Denver, Colorado, Parker, Colorado, Dallas, Texas, Glasgow in Scotland, Tunisia, France, Toronto, India. A lot of different places people are joining from today all over the world. So thanks for everyone for being here. And again, if you have questions that you'd like to ask Theresa or I, please feel free to drop those in the chat and we'll get to those. We'll start to get to some of the questions that are coming in here.
Well, I'm from Washington and it's gray outside.
Oh, that's right. You're in Washington. I'm in Las Vegas, Nevada. So we're all in random places here today.
There you go.
So I guess here's a question that I think might be on the top of a lot of people's minds. It's sort of opinion, but you can also obviously introduce facts if you have them. But I guess the question here is, do you think all of our jobs will eventually be obsolete because of artificial intelligence? In other words, should we all be, I know you mentioned before the power of words and the fear that comes with that, but is there, are people rightfully concerned that their jobs might be automated and therefore might be at risk in the future?
Well, I would ask, what is your job? Like, what are you doing that would be 100% replaced by AI? That's what I would want to know. You know, from a doctor to a lawyer to a consultant to a restaurant owner, there's always an aspect of value added versus non-value added activity. So what part of your job do you feel would be obsolete if AI does come into your organization? I mean, that's, to me, I don't believe people will lose their jobs. I believe their skill sets will shift. I believe that they will have a larger portion of quote unquote that value added activity, the greater sense of what they do as a profession, so they can really focus their time and their attention on what they're paid to do. Let's not kid ourselves here. We are paid for what the customer is willing to pay us for. That's the definition of value added activity. If a client is not going to pay me to spend 20% of my job fiddling through spreadsheets or collecting data or, what have you, then what value does that bring to me, to my job, and to the organization? So I have to be very cognizant of what do I do in my job every day that I need to increase my value. And let's just say you're looking at yourself, maybe expanding into the market. What does the market need? What do I need to improve upon myself to become more valuable in the marketplace? I think that's what people should really be asking, instead of, am I going to lose my job? And again, lose my job has that negative connotation, right? So why don't we shift to something more positive on, okay, what about my skill set do I need to improve to become more valuable or become more desirable in the marketplace or even in my own organization? Maybe it's my Sally Sunshine trying to come out from all this grayness, but I don't like to focus on the negative so much because I know how detrimental and powerful in a negative way that could be to a person in an organization. That little seed of negativity, of darkness, it kind of grows. And I don't believe people really want to be in that space. So instead of thinking, okay, I'm going to lose my job, flip it and say, what do I need to do to be more marketable, to have a better skill set, to improve my skill set, to grow within my industry, or maybe I want to, do something else. What is it that I want to do in particular that'll bring more value and more satisfaction to myself? I don't really like that, I'm going to lose my job. There's so many other things that we could be focused on to improve our personal standing as well as our standing in an organization that we should, I know the questions are going to be asked, but again, that comes from a place of fear. What do I need to get out of that to create a space of abundance and happiness? And again, it's a little fuzzy bunny. I get it, but we're people. We're not machines, right? We need to have the balance.
Yeah, exactly.
It's probably not what you were looking for, but
no, it's a good, that's exactly what I wanted to get at is I think there tends to be fear of technology in general, not just AI, but technology in general. I think there's a general fear that people, you mentioned earlier how in the absence of information and clarity, people will create sometimes a worst case scenario for themselves, their perceived scenario for themselves. And so that's why clarity of what people's jobs are going to look like and how their contributions are still going to be valued and how they're going to use these new technologies, all that clarity has to be there, or else people will revert to the negative at times.
100%. And then you're going to have, people protesting and, pitchforks everywhere. So, and again, it's interesting to me how people think when they receive a message. It's instinctual when I look at someone and I say, okay, did they receive it in a positive way or in a negative way? And that really helps me as a change management professional to scope my next step and message, right? Because I have to address the way they receive the information. And unfortunately, I think we as a society have been conditioned to embrace a negative emotion or a negative message and run with it versus let me help you let me help you to see the positive and how you can be successful. Oh, you're full of it. That's not true. Anything with positive reinforcement or that type of messaging is really met with more resistance, in my opinion, than, oh my gosh, the world's blowing up and you're going to lose your job. And people are like, yeah, you're right. They are. Wait a minute.
Right.
What's going on? So, yeah, it's interesting to me when I hear people and see how they accept messages. It kind of speaks to a little bit of how they think. So,
yeah. Now, if we shift gears a bit and then look at AI and its role in change management as a discipline. So we've sort of been talking about how AI impacts an organization and how change management is so important to help people navigate the changes that come along with AI technology. But if we sort of switch that around a little bit now and look at the change management function and discipline within an organization, how can AI enable better organizational change management? And what are some use cases, or do you have any examples of how that might happen?
So I know that one thing that as a change management professional that I spend a lot of time on is the data analytic piece, right? So within an AI environment, if I were to have that, I would have the data at my hands to make decisions quicker. Because in an organization's time is money, right? So if I know of an initiative that's going to the left sooner than later, I can address that. So the predictive analytic piece of an AI bot or whatever you want to call it, in my opinion, as a change management professional, would be imperative. It would be something that I would use constantly, because if I can identify the problem sooner, quicker, I can identify a root cause sooner and quicker and make those changes, bring the teams in, talk about it, and have the execution sooner, which it has a direct link to an impact to the ROI. So that's one of the pieces that I'm really interested in seeing how it would work within an AI environment, is being able to have that predictive analytic synergy for the team members and helping them to understand the data. Because you want to talk about data, that's another thing people are afraid of. They're afraid of numbers. They don't know how they gathered, how do they get calculated, how do they get used, etc. So if I'm able to bring that to the team as, okay, here's the data set, let's talk about it, instead of, hey, I need everyone to gather the data and we got to figure out how to analyze it, et cetera, that removes another fear right there. So the data analytic piece to me is going to be one important benefit to change management. Another one is, again, the training and onboarding and the adoption of these digital platforms. I think there's a lot of work that the AI could do to help facilitate the training and onboarding and measure it, and making sure that we're completely, the teams understand it. They have, if there are any gaps in training, I can identify it sooner. Onboarding, there are no holes missing. We can make sure that that program addresses everything we needed to address, and then look at the analytics to see how we're performing.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. And you mentioned that. Sorry, I'm about to sneeze. Right as you finish
Okay.
your.
I was trying not to cough for the last 20 minutes because I have asthma. Like,
right as you finished, I was about to hit the mute button and sneeze, and then you finished, and I couldn't quite get to it. So I'll try to hold back the sneeze. It's really dusty. I'm in the desert right now, and there's a windstorm or a sandstorm yesterday, so it's super sandy in the air right now. So I guess you bring up a couple good points. One is that one that I think
only really a couple.
Just in that one.
I'm only joking.
But you mentioned how the use of data in change management. I think those are two words a lot of people don't put together. Data,
really?
Change management, and it is a way to make something that's very vague and touchy-feely and hard to understand, that being change management and how people react to change. Data is a good way to sort of ground it, to give it form, if you will. It allows you to understand or anticipate where potential resistance might come from, what the sources of resistance are, how you're going to overcome it. And I think that you bring up some good examples of how data and AI could help us do change management better by collecting better data and responding to better data, understand it, interpret it, anticipate how people are going to respond to changes. All that stuff could be enabled by AI. I think that's what you're saying. Is that fair?
That is fair. As well as to make sure that we are using our KPIs appropriately, and we're responding sooner to them. Because when I have my change management initiatives, I make sure that we are meeting at a specific cadence, so a change doesn't go too far down the path and then I discover that it's not working. That's the last thing you want to do, is start to create a behavior that's not working and then have to go back and rip it all up and say, oh, we have to switch gears. So that's another piece of change management that I believe AI will help with, is to be able to switch gears sooner and get to identify those issues sooner, so we can discover the root cause and create action plans to move forward. You don't want to spend 2 weeks and then find out, oops, we're trending the wrong way on our data set. You want to get to it sooner rather than later.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And here's a question that's, I'll be honest, it's a bit over my head, but we'll see if you have a better answer for it than I might here, Theresa. And this is from Andre on YouTube. Asked the question: which techniques in AI, clustering, regression, or outlier detection is closest to change management? I refer to purposes, outcomes, and fit for purpose. I felt like this question was sort of like what you were just talking about, but I'm not sure. What are your thoughts? Do you have any
Which techniques in AI clustering, regression, or outlier detection is closer to change management? I prefer to purpose and outcome and fit for purpose. I'm not
And
understanding
maybe
what
focus
that
on
really means, but
maybe
yeah.
that.
But for me, again, when you look at the data sets alone and how we're performing for change management, okay, my teams are not going to look at that. They're not going to understand regression, clustering, anything like that. They're going to have the data set, and we're going to discuss it and talk about it and say, okay, why is this going this way? I think the points on the data set maybe is what would be a reference to his question to understand which way are we trending to determine our next steps. Teams don't want to hear that. They don't want to have to go in and try to figure out why, how the data set is moving or regressing. They want to know that, okay, it's not working. Why is it not working? And what do we have to do to root cause it to course correct, right? But that's my job as a change manager to get the data set to make sure that I present it to the team and we talk about the root cause, like what is causing this out of the different activities that we've engaged in. That's my opinion. So the regression and the clustering, et cetera, those are the way the data is responding and on the graphics or the charts. So I have to interpret it. So I can say, hey team, we're not doing this. It's not trending right. We're not hitting our goal. We're below our target. What do we need to do? All of that mess, or not mess, but all all of that work, in my opinion, the AI can help populate and show corrective action or show where it did not perform where we needed to perform. So I'm saving time, and now I have to interpret, and now we have to work on not a root cause, but an action plan.
Right. Yeah, that's a
I
good.
hope that was helpful because I am not a data scientist, but you know what?
Yeah, that was getting
I
pretty
know, I know enough to be dangerous. Let's put it that way.
deep. So, so I think you've given my next question was going to be some potential examples or use cases of AI and change management. I think you've given a good example that's very relevant as far as how you can use data and use that to help anticipate and plan and manage for change better. Do you think that so here's as we were preparing for this, or as I was thinking of questions to ask you for this, I should say, one of the things that I was thinking about and fascinated by is I feel like this topic might be the first time where I've had a conversation with someone talking about something that is relevant to people that are focused on helping people through change,
Yeah.
but they themselves might be significantly affected, or there might be significant concern or trepidation about the change, and that is, the whole kind of turning the table now on on change management practitioners and saying, now we have a technology that's going to help you do your job better for all of you that are helping other people through change. And so I just am curious, like, what do you think that AI's impact on the change management community will be? And do you think that the change management community, those of us that are focused on this stuff for a living, how open do you think we really are to AI? Is it
Well,
going to backfire on us because we're the ones that are supposed to support change, but now we're going to resist the change? Or how do you see
well,
it?
okay. So I have an opinion on change managers who don't like change.
Right.
Let me just let me just say
They
that.
exist, right? There are a lot of them, or not a lot, but there's a fair amount, I'd say, in the world.
Honestly, from my perspective, I can do the data set, the analytic, and the people piece and the technology piece. So that's been my career. Um, as a change manager, I know that people are at the core of what I do. So I am not in any way, shape, or form intimidated or have any fear with AI coming to my practice and helping me do a better job. Because now I can focus my time working with Eric or working with whomever to help them move from an area of resistance to the technology to embracing it. An AI program is never going to be able to connect with you the way I can connect with you because we're people. I think that if a change manager is solely focused on, gathering data, interpreting the data, making charts, I think maybe then we need to talk about, okay, how can we get you to that, next level of your practice? But in my opinion, AI is really going to help facilitate the work between the current state and the future state in understanding how we're performing, so I can really focus my time on Eric or on Kyler or whomever to help move from a place of resistance to how can I do a better job using the technology that we just had implemented. I have no fear.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'd be curious to see, if there are some that might fear it, even though there's a certain amount of irony in that question, I suppose that, I'm asking a question about change management people that should be open to change. So in theory, there shouldn't be any real issues, but again, we're all human. And if in the absence of information or clarity, we're going to at times doubt those perceptions.
Honestly, I think you hit it right on the head with that one. The information and the clarity is how we're going to get over this. I mean, even for myself, I'm learning about AI every day. I don't know enough about it to have my practice, have AI in my practice, because I need to understand how it works. What are the benefits? What is the growth? How quickly does the technology improve? All of those things. I don't, honestly, now that I think about it, I don't think I'll ever fully understand it because things are happening so quickly and they're changing so rapidly. I will never be an expert at that, but I will be able to understand it, to embrace it to the point of use, right? So if you look at the marketplace, Eric, it's exploding and it's changing so rapidly. My point is we need to get ahead of that and to understand it and embrace it and to use this to help improve our practice and our business. For who, again? Our teams and our end customer. Because we keep having these conversations, not me and you, but people have these conversations about, an organization, et cetera, et cetera. Yes, it is important, but at the end of the day, we have a customer. If that customer does not buy from us or if they don't use our services, we don't have an organization. We don't have, employees. So we have to make sure that we're looking at AI as how can it benefit our employees, but how can it benefit our end user, our customer, or, the product that we're providing.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a good reminder that we should be focused on that end customer and sort of looking at the greater purpose of what it is we do every day and how it affects our end customers.
I mean, I hear a lot of conversations on a lot of platforms, and yes, I agree. Employees are important. They are, but our end customer is also important, because if we don't have someone paying the bills to keep the lights on, we have no organization.
Yeah.
So we have to have that balance of what's good for our employees and our culture, but what is going to help our consumer or our customer as well to keep coming back, expand our market share, to get a bigger piece of that pie.
Yeah. Yeah. And organizations that are going through a transformation, whether it's with AI or any other technology, I think they'd serve themselves well by sort of keeping everyone focused on that. I think that gives you a lot of clarity and direction and purpose, when you're going through a big transformation but yet, so many organizations sort of turn inward and worry more about, well, what does this mean for me? Or what does this, how does this affect our team, which is important, but
it is important. I mean, I think
the other stuff.
There needs to be a balance there. There is a duality there. But again, at the end of the day, happy employees, productive employees create a better product for our client or better experience for our client. So how does AI really fit into that? How are we going to tap into the power of that to create the experience, reduce the non-value added activity to produce a better service or product for our client?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So I guess longer term then, how do you think, do you have any opinions or have you read anything interesting in your research that would suggest how AI will affect the whole discipline of change management in the longer term?
So the one thing that kind of sparked my interest. And number one is the fact that it's a tidal wave coming and you can't ignore it no matter where you try to hide. It's coming. So embrace it.
Right.
But number two is really being able to focus on my practice as opposed to focus on that data piece, becoming that there's a lot of time in that. So if I'm able to have my AI monitor alerts, et cetera, the pulse of my project or my initiative, and then I can really focus on root causing it and getting action plans going, helping the teams understand, creating the culture of embracing what we're doing. I would rather spend my time doing that than having to research pull the data, put it in an Excel or whatever, and create this and create. I would rather spend my time working with the people that are actually doing the job than gathering the data for the analytic.
Right. Yeah. I'd be curious to see how that changes, or how quickly that evolves and gets adopted by the change management community and by organizations in general. I'll be curious to see how, just if we step aside from change management and user adoption, just how will AI be embraced or not, by organizations.
Well, even when we had this conversation earlier, people are thinking change management is, a fuzzy bunny with a rainbow and we're all singing Kumbaya. There's so much more involved in that, monitoring and creating those action plans and finding root causes. So all of that, I believe maybe I could spend a little bit more time doing the fuzzy bunny and rainbow stuff. I don't know, but if we're able to use AI in a productive, positive way to help create a better experience for our clients or employees, I'm all for it. Like if I could spend more time with like Eric and Kelly and Kyler and in helping everyone to kind of move towards the change with greater ease and higher adoption and usage, and I can help show you the benefit of what we're doing as opposed to spending my time on the data analytics or developing those training platforms or onboarding or communication where it's more automated, then I can spend more time, in my opinion, in an area that I'm being paid to do so.
Right.
I bring more value to you if I'm giving you more of my expertise to help your teams move towards the change.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it kind of gets back to not being afraid of it and embracing it. It's easier said than done for many parts of an organization, but I think as leaders, that's what we have to do.
Absolutely. And it's really intriguing to me. Like, I would love to do a case study or something around that fear-based decision making. It's so interesting to me how people go for that first as opposed to the benefit or how it can help an organization or a team. It's just that psychology background of mine. I'm just like, why?
Yeah. Like when you think about AI, why is it that, or any sort of automation, why is it that people, and it's not all. I mean, I think some people within an organization might be excited about any sort of change. They just like change. They like excitement or whatever. But then there's other people within an organization that, you're right. It's sort of like if you leave them to their own devices, they're not going to default to, this is going to be awesome. It's going to be great. And you imagine all the possibilities. They're going to default to, this is going to suck. It's going to be different. I'm not going to like it. They're going to take away my job. This is just corporate trying to jam new technology in my throat again, just like they always do. You sort of like a negativity that sort of creeps in. But I think it's, if you leave an open void there and you leave people too much room for interpretation or to decide for themselves what they think the future is going to look like. Some might be positive, but others might be negative. And a lot of times the negativity will sort of outweigh or take over the positivity that might exist within that same team or organization.
Yeah. So back to your other point of what a change manager can do to help use the AI. I think one of the things that they can do is to understand what AI is and the benefits of it. So unless you research it like I've been doing and understanding what it means and what it can do for yourself and your own practice, as well as your organization, your clients, I think that the industry won't embrace it because they won't see the value, which goes back to your earlier point of clarity, messaging, and understanding.
Yeah.
You have to provide that because you're going to fear the unknown. It's human. It's what we do. We fear the unknown, and until we understand what it really means and how it can really help us, there will be resistance to it.
Yeah, it's a good point. And with AI, it being a newer emerging technology, there's a lot that a lot of people don't know, ourselves included. You and I and others on our team don't know everything there is to know about AI, and there's a lot we're still learning. And so, every organization, that's probably true. There's going to be new technologies that they just don't know a lot about. So that just further fuels the need to provide the clarity that we can to counter some of that.
100%. And again, as I stated earlier, this is coming. It's not like a flash in the pan. It's coming. So we have to be ready for it when it does hit, and we have to be at the forefront of these types of initiatives to be successful. It's not going to go away. It's just not.
Yeah.
Just like
Agreed.
the
And that's,
cell phone, it went from like, this big to this big. It's happening. It's transforming. It's happening. So let's do
yeah,
the smart thing and figure out what it means and how we can use it to our advantage.
right. Absolutely agree with that. And that's actually a great way to kind of close it up, or to summarize the whole conversation is, and those are good words of advice for any sort of change initiative, not even just AI related stuff. But well, I want to thank you, Theresa, for bringing life to a topic that a lot of people don't know a lot about, and there's a lot I learned here today. So I appreciate you having the conversation with us here today. There's really good stuff, very interesting stuff too. It's sort of a cool combination of two total opposite disciplines. They really couldn't be that much different. Change management
100%.
and data-driven AI. But they don't need to be that different. There's a common ground there that needs to converge in order for this all to work. So I want to thank you for your time and for being here today to discuss. And thank you to the audience for being here. Absolutely. And thank you to the audience for being here. Some good questions we had there. And as I mentioned before, this recording of this conversation will become part of our Transformation Ground Control podcast, which comes out every Wednesday. So the episode that comes out a week from tomorrow will feature this interview. So if you want to see the edited, polished version after it goes through production, you can watch that a week from Wednesday. And it premieres on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter as well. All the same platforms we're having this conversation on. We also stream the premiere of the podcast on as well. So thank you, everyone, for your time here today. Hope you all have a great day. Hope you found this information helpful. I hope you'll share this interview with anyone you think might be interested in it, and give us a like and follow us on social media too, if you don't mind. That just helps us keep pumping out more good content like this. So thanks, everyone, for your time. Thank you, Theresa. Thanks, audience, and have a great week. We will see you all soon on our next live stream, which we do every Tuesday. Have a great week in the meantime.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Theresa.
Bye.
Bye.